Today is June 3rd, 2026, marking day 94 of the standoff between Iran and the United States. The critical question that few in mainstream reporting are addressing is how Iran, after absorbing this level of military pressure, still manages to launch ballistic missiles at American bases 3 times in 5 days, strike a container ship with a cruise missile, shoot down a U.S. drone, and simultaneously claim participation in peace talks. The answer to this shapes the conflict's trajectory, what a potential deal must include, and why a ceasefire designed as a bridge to an agreement has turned into one of the most violent in recent military history. From May 27th, U.S. forces targeted Iranian drone ground control facilities near Band Abbas following the downing of an MQ-9 Reaper over the Strait of Hormuz. The next day, Iran fired a Fada 110 short-range ballistic missile at Ali Alzam Air Base in Kuwait. Patriot batteries intercepted it, yet debris landed inside the base, wounding 5 Americans, including active duty personnel and contractors, destroying one MQ-9 Reaper worth $30 million, and heavily damaging a second, another $30 million lost, totaling $60 million from a single partially intercepted missile. On June 1st, U.S. strikes destroyed additional Iranian military sites, including radar networks and command nodes on Qashm Island and the drone control facility at Ghor, eliminating the IRGC's surveillance and coordination over the strait. That same weekend, Iran downed a U.S. MQ-1 Predator. Later that night, 2 more ballistic missiles targeted Ali Alzam Air Base. Both were cleanly intercepted and debris caused no casualties. That day, the IRGC Navy fired a cruise missile at the container ship MSC Sarisa Fiv near Basra, Iraq, operated by Mediterranean Shipping Company. The vessel sustained 2 hits, a fire broke out, and the crew evacuated safely. Iran stated this was retaliation for the U.S. disabling the tanker Leon Star the previous Friday. 3 strikes on Ali Alzam Air Base within 5 days, a cruise missile on a container ship, all during a ceasefire and active peace talks. Then Iran suspended negotiations entirely. The question is not what occurred, but how Iran maintained this capability after 94 days of U.S. operations that destroyed 90% of its defense industrial base, collapsed underground missile cities, crippled its navy, degraded air defenses, and imposed $500 million in daily blockade losses. The answer begins with the Zagros Mountains. Stretching approximately 1,500 kilometers across western and southwestern Iran, these mountains cover provinces closest to Iraq and Kuwait. Their rugged, remote, and geologically complex terrain, including peaks over 4,000 meters, provides natural concealment for military infrastructure far beyond flat terrain camouflage. Iran has spent decades constructing tunnel complexes and hardened underground facilities within the Zagros. Granite and limestone formations offer natural protection reinforced with engineered hardening. Missile storage and launch sites are integrated into the rock, with tunnel entrances that can close and disguise between operational cycles, and multiple access points allow launchers to move from storage to firing positions without prolonged exposure to surveillance. Iran employs a mobile launcher system. A launcher exits a tunnel, moves to a pre-surveyed firing position, erects the missile, counts down, launches, and returns underground before the U.S. can engage. This combination of mobile launchers and rugged terrain makes the ballistic missile network extremely difficult to neutralize by air strikes alone. The Zagros network survived both Operation Midnight Hammer, which targeted fixed nuclear facilities, and Operation Epic Fury, which struck coastal military infrastructure near Band Abbas and the Strait. The surviving infrastructure is reserved for high-priority escalations because each launch exposes the network's current status, and launchers are only briefly visible between tunnel and firing positions. Iran has deliberately created fake tunnel entrances and dummy launch facilities in the Zagros to mislead U.S. surveillance. These decoys mimic real tunnel entrances and emit radar signatures consistent with operational missile systems. Some activate briefly to generate electromagnetic signals associated with missile preparations. The purpose is to divert intelligence collection, expend U.S. precision munitions on empty tunnels, and create ambiguity that complicates confident targeting. Every fake tunnel destroyed potentially preserves a real missile. This deception exploits the fact that U.S. precision strikes are limited by the confidence in target intelligence, not by delivery accuracy. A B-2 can hit within meters, but identifying real versus fake targets remains the bottleneck. The U.S. missile defense system in the region uses layered architecture. Layer 1 is THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, which intercepts ballistic missiles at high altitude, both inside and outside the atmosphere, using hit-to-kill with no explosive warhead. Metal kill vehicles collide with incoming missiles at Mach 8. THAAD. Batteries were redeployed from Pacific and European commands to Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, limiting global availability and observed closely by China for strategic calculations. Layer 2 is the Patriot PAC-3 missile segment enhancement, offering mid-altitude interception against short-range ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and large drones. Patriot batteries, including at Ali Al-Sam Air Base, have been continuously operational. The May 28th intercept of the Fata 110 was a PAC-3 engagement that destroyed the missile but could not prevent debris from impacting the base, causing the 5 casualties and $60 million in drone damage. Layer 3 is the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer offshore with SM-3 Standard missiles, capable of boost phase intercepts at long ranges, keeping engagements away from defended areas. At least one SM-3 intercept of an Iranian missile occurred earlier in this conflict. The combined effect of THAAD at high altitude during terminal descent, Patriot PAC-3 at medium altitude, and SM-3 at long range during boost phase forms a 3-layer defensive network that has achieved a 90 to 92% interception rate throughout the conflict. That rate is exceptional by any historical standard. Iran understands the statistics. They know that 8% of their missiles penetrate in some form. They also know that even partially intercepted missiles produce debris that lands inside defended perimeters. The Fata 110, intercepted on May 28th, demonstrates Iran exploiting this 8%. The missile was destroyed before reaching its target, yet debris killed $60 million worth of U.S. equipment and wounded 5 personnel. Iran has started deploying maneuvering re-entry vehicles on selected ballistic missiles. These variants follow unpredictable trajectories during terminal descent, rather than the fixed arc of a standard re-entry vehicle that a hit-to-kill system can intercept. A maneuvering vehicle changes direction in descent, invalidating intercept calculations. This adaptation challenges the assumptions behind hit-to-kill systems and is actively deployed by the IRGC. The cruise missile strike on the MSC Saresa 5 highlights a different capability. The Panama-flagged container ship, operated by Mediterranean Shipping Company, was near Basra in Iraq at the northern Persian Gulf when struck. Iran described the attack as reciprocal for the Hellfire missile disabling the tanker Leon Star earlier in the week. 2 projectiles hit the vessel. The first struck while the harbor pilot was aboard. The second hit the crew quarters, causing a hole and a fire. The crew evacuated safely, which MSC confirmed, praising their professionalism under attack. By calling the strike reciprocal, the IRGC aims to create a tit-for-tat logic where American enforcement against Iranian shipping triggers Iranian attacks on commercial vessels. Every cruise missile strike raises insurance premiums, potentially deterring commercial shipping regardless of American blockade enforcement. Iran is using insurance economics to influence Gulf navigation. The current escalation cycle centers on IRGC Deputy Commander Mohammad Jafar Asadi. He stated that U.S. demands total surrender and that Iran will never surrender, adding that war is inevitable without surrender. This is a declaration, not a negotiating position. For the Iranian public, it reinforces resistance narratives that justify IRGC control over political direction. To the U.S. negotiators, it signals that the military faction rejects civilian diplomatic terms discussed in Doha. For other IRGC factions, it demonstrates that hardline leadership remains intact. The IRGC has lost 3 senior commanders in 9 months. The commander ordering drone and missile operations knows the risks. The aerospace and missile command position is among the most dangerous in Iran, as every successful strike also makes the commander a high-priority target for U.S. or Israeli precision strikes. On the Russian front, the Su-57D 2-seat variant was flown with a pilot in front and a drone operator in the back to manage drone wingmen during exercises. Unlike Ukrainian autonomous systems, which operate with AI responding to a single pilot, Russia requires a human backseater. Adding the second crew reduces stealth because a larger cockpit canopy increases radar return. This demonstrates a compromise between Russia's 6th-generation ambitions and current AI capabilities. In the Pacific, China surrounded the Philippines during Balikatan 2026 exercises, coinciding with U.S., Japanese, and Philippine forces. The deployment demonstrates that defense cooperation with the U.S. triggers immediate Chinese military presence, producing domestic political pressure in partner countries. 7 consecutive days without PLA air sorties near Taiwan suggest China is allowing diplomatic space around U.S. commitments to the Iran conflict, while observing Gulf deployments and munitions use for planning future contingencies. By June 2, 2026, Iran struck Ali Al-Sam Air Base 3 times in 5 days, fired a cruise missile at a container ship, and suspended peace talks. The deputy commander declared war inevitable if American surrender demands are not withdrawn. The Zagros tunnel network remains the primary source of missile launches, unaddressed by targeting campaigns. The layered missile defense is achieving 92% interceptions, yet the remaining 8% produce real consequences. Russia operates 2-seat Su-57s due to AI limits, and China projects naval power around the Philippines to impose political costs. The previously near-agreed deal is suspended. The blockade continues at $500 million per day. B-2 Spirits and F-15Es with 5,000-pound GBU-72 bunker busters are positioned against the Zagros network. Iran's ballistic missile launches have declined from 100 per day at conflict onset to an estimated dozen per day if full hostilities resume. Launches occur at escalatory moments as commanders know the window is closing. The IRGC must show offensive capability to its internal audience, regardless of inventory cost. The ceasefire is suspended. The blockade holds. The Zagros tunnels are the next target. IRGC commanders ordering these launches operate under what may be described as an enhanced life insurance clause with job tenure measured in months rather than years. The complete targeting picture surrounding the Zagros Mountain Ballistic Missile Network centers on the military challenge that the B-2 Spirit and the F-15E Strike Eagle are positioned to solve. The outcome determines whether Iran can continue launching ballistic missiles against American facilities indefinitely, or whether the remaining launch infrastructure is removed in the same methodical fashion that coastal naval assets were eliminated during the opening weeks of the conflict. The GBU-72 Advanced 5,000-pound bomb is the weapon specifically intended for hardened underground targets at the depth associated with the Zagros tunnel complexes. This penetrating munition uses a reinforced steel casing designed to survive passage through rock, concrete, and soil before the fuse initiates detonation within the target itself. Earlier in the conflict, the GBU-72 was employed along the Strait of Hormuz against coastal tunnel facilities containing IRGC fast attack boats and missile stockpiles. That employment demonstrated both the bomb's ability to penetrate fortified underground structures and the B-2 Spirit's precision in delivering it against specific tunnel entrance coordinates in difficult terrain. The F-15E Strike Eagle carries the GBU-72 on its centerline station beneath the fuselage, the mounting point approved for the aircraft's heaviest weapons. Combined with targeting pods capable of providing precise designation, the aircraft delivers both the accuracy and penetration required for operations against the Zagros network. The challenge that makes the Zagros campaign more difficult than the coastal campaign is Iran's network of deceptive tunnel entrances. These decoys were constructed specifically to draw American precision weapons toward empty locations. Every GBU-72 dropped on a false entrance consumes a 5,000-pound weapon without eliminating an operational target. Distinguishing genuine tunnel facilities from decoys requires extensive intelligence fusion using multiple collection methods. The RC-135V rivet joint signals intelligence aircraft, the WC-135R atmospheric collection platform, the Space Force satellite constellation, and persistent MQ-4C Triton surveillance coverage all contribute simultaneously. Authentic tunnel entrances generate signatures that differ from decoys when viewed through multiple intelligence disciplines. Electronic emissions from actual missile components inside active facilities contain technical characteristics that differ from simulated signals designed to imitate operational activity. Signals intelligence analysts use those distinctions to separate valid targets from false ones with enough confidence to justify the use of precision munitions. Iran's suspension of negotiations must also be viewed within a broader strategic framework. The decision to halt talks on the same day that 2 ballistic missiles were intercepted over Kuwait highlights an internal dynamic that may be the central analytical issue of the conflict. Iran suspended negotiations on the morning of June 2nd. State media cited American demands that Tehran described as equivalent to total surrender. The deputy military commander's public statement that war becomes unavoidable without surrender represented a declaration by the military faction that the civilian diplomatic process in Doha no longer reflected the regime's actual negotiating position. When military leadership publicly declares war unavoidable while civilian negotiators continue seeking a framework agreement, the two tracks are no longer synchronized. The military statement is not presented as leverage for improved terms. Instead, it publicly contradicts the civilian approach and signals that diplomats lack authority to commit military institutions to any agreement. Reports regarding the Iranian president's resignation letter, if even partially accurate, reinforce this interpretation. According to those reports, hardline IRGC factions assumed control over major state decisions, while civilian authorities were increasingly sidelined. If the civilian president submitted a resignation specifically because the IRGC displaced his authority, then the individuals negotiating in Doha were discussing commitments they may not have possessed the power to implement. This structural issue explains why a framework has reportedly been described as nearly complete multiple times without ever reaching signature. An agreement that exists only among individuals lacking enforcement authority is not operationally complete. It remains a framework on paper rather than a binding arrangement controlling the institutions that possess the weapons. The cruise missile strike against MSC Sarisa Fiv also carries an economic objective separate from direct military pressure. Mediterranean Shipping Company is one of the 2 largest container shipping operators in the world. Its insurance coverage involves Lloyd's of London and other major maritime insurance providers. When an MSC vessel is struck by a cruise missile in the northern Persian Gulf, the consequences extend far beyond the ship involved. Every MSC vessel, every competing container carrier, every bulk cargo ship, and every tanker operating in the region is affected. War risk insurance premiums increase immediately following incidents of this nature because actuarial assessments are based on demonstrated frequency and severity of attacks. A cruise missile strike causing a hull breach and major fire aboard a commercial vessel represents one of the highest severity categories within maritime insurance calculations. As costs rise, every operator using northern Persian Gulf routes faces greater expenses regardless of nationality, cargo type, or connection to the American blockade. Iran is attempting to make commercial operations throughout the northern Persian Gulf economically unattractive by driving insurance costs to levels where alternative routes become more practical. This mirrors the strategic logic applied to the Strait of Hormuz throughout the conflict and extends that pressure toward approaches near Basra and Kuwait. While the blockade restricts Iranian maritime commerce, Iran seeks to impose broader economic pressure on Gulf shipping as a response. The developments of June 2, 2026, create three realistic short-term possibilities for the next 72 hours. The first possibility is that Iran's suspension of negotiations triggers an American ultimatum. Such an ultimatum would establish a specific deadline for returning to negotiations under conditions that include the uranium commitment described publicly by Bessent, a Hormuz free navigation guarantee, and the nuclear weapons prohibition that Trump stated Iran verbally accepted. If that deadline expires, B-2s and F-15Es could begin the Zagros missile network campaign supported by 94 days of accumulated targeting intelligence. The second possibility is that the suspension remains temporary and tactical. Under this scenario, the IRGC faction responsible for the missile launches achieves its internal political objective, and civilian negotiators return within days carrying a revised position that provides sufficient face-saving language for military approval. This outcome aligns with a recurring pattern of maximum escalation followed by renewed diplomacy. The third possibility is that the suspension is genuine and permanent. Under this scenario, the IRGC has effectively replaced the civilian government as the primary decision-making authority, as suggested by reports surrounding the president's resignation letter. If true, there may no longer be a civilian faction, with enough authority to return to negotiations and sign an agreement. In that case, the diplomatic path closes and military action becomes the remaining option for securing the uranium commitments and Hormuz reopening, tied to Bessant's three stated red lines. The three missile launches against the same base in Kuwait within 5 days, the cruise missile strike on a container ship, the drone shoot-down, the suspension of negotiations, and the deputy military commander's declaration that war is inevitable all suggest that the civilian faction's authority may be more limited than previously believed when reports indicated a framework agreement was nearly complete. At the same time, the IRGC's own institutional interests still favor some version of an agreement over a full return to unrestricted hostilities. A complete resumption of conflict would place the B-2 fleet and the Zagros missile infrastructure on a collision course, potentially eliminating the remaining ballistic missile capability that Iran has preserved as its final strategic source of leverage. The IRGC is launching missiles to demonstrate that capability remains intact. Yet every launch intended to prove strength also contributes to the intelligence picture used to target that capability. That contradiction sits at the center of the current strategy. The weapons being used to display continued power are also generating the information needed to locate and eliminate them. No dust, no dollars. 3 strikes against Kuwait in 5 days. A cruise missile launched at a container ship. Negotiations suspended. The Zagros tunnel network stands as the next objective on the target list, and the B-2 Spirit remains positioned for what may become its next visit to the mountains. If you found this analysis valuable, follow for more in-depth military, political, and geopolitical coverage as events continue to develop. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.